When my boss looked me dead in the eye and told me I was not qualified for the promotion that I had literally built from the ground up, I did not scream. I did not cry. I simply smiled, got in my car, and drove home. 5 days later, I was sipping a mimosa in Sedona while my phone lit up with exactly 99 missed calls and a multi-million-dollar logistics empire burned to the ground. Before I tell you how a single resignation letter brought an entire corporation to its knees, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to smile through the disrespect of a boss who severely underestimated your worth. My name is Aaliyah. I am 35 years old and I am the Senior Director of Global Supply Chain at Vanguard Logistics. At least that is what my email signature says. In reality, I am the engine, the transmission, and the steering wheel of this entire company. I sit perfectly still in the freezing glass-walled boardroom on the top floor of the Vanguard building in downtown Atlanta. The air conditioning is always turned up too high up here, a deliberate tactic to keep people alert and slightly uncomfortable, but I am used to it. I keep my posture perfectly straight, my shoulders relaxed and my face arranged in an expression of pleasant professionalism. Directly in front of me, glowing on a massive high-definition monitor, is the Q3 projection deck. It is my deck. Every data point, every bar chart, every deeply analyzed metric on that screen is the result of my own sweat and exhaustion. I built the automated routing infrastructure that is currently keeping this company profitable. I built it from absolutely nothing. Before I took over the supply chain division, Vanguard Logistics was bleeding cash through sheer operational inefficiency. They were relying on outdated legacy software routing national freight trucks manually and losing millions in fuel waste and driver overtime. I saw the catastrophe looming 3 years ago. I did not just point out the problem, I engineered the solution. I spent my evenings, my weekends, and my holidays designing a highly complex, completely automated routing system. I mapped out the architecture, integrated a proprietary algorithm that predicted weather patterns and traffic bottlenecks, and personally oversaw the rollout across all 48 of our regional hubs. I cut our transit times by 30% and reduced operational costs by a staggering margin. The numbers on the screen behind the conference table reflect an 8-figure savings for Vanguard Logistics in the last fiscal year alone. All of it points directly to me. Across the wide expanse of polished mahogany sits Kendrick, our Chief Executive Officer. Kendrick is a man in his late 50s who was born on third base and genuinely believes he hit a triple. He wears a bespoke Italian suit that likely cost more than my first car, and he has the kind of expensive, perfectly capped smile that usually precedes a corporate betrayal. He is tapping a silver pen, rhythmically, against his leather portfolio, looking back and forth between me and the glowing numbers on the monitor. He has that patronizing, fatherly look on his face that he uses whenever he wants to assert dominance while pretending to be collaborative. Vanguard Logistics is a notoriously traditional company. The executive floor is a sea of tailored suits, golf course tans, and generational wealth. Breaking into that inner circle as a Black woman was never going to be simple. I knew that from the day I was hired. I knew the unspoken rules of this environment. I knew I had to be twice as good work, 3 times as hard, and never make a single misstep just to be considered equal to the mediocre men who failed upward around me. While Kendrick and the other senior executives spent their Friday afternoons on the golf course discussing high-level strategy over expensive scotch, I was on the warehouse floor in a high-visibility vest. I was down in the dirt troubleshooting conveyor belt jams, analyzing freight load distributions, and learning the physical reality behind the numbers. I know the name of every regional dispatcher. I know the exact weight limits of every trucking route in the Southeast Corridor. I earned my expertise with calluses and sleepless nights. That is why I am sitting in this boardroom today. I have been playing the long game for 3 grueling years, positioning myself for the Vice President of Operations role. It is the only logical conclusion to my current trajectory. The position has been vacant for 2 months, and I have effectively been doing the job without the title, the recognition, or the executive compensation. The numbers on the board are undeniable. My performance metrics are flawless. My team retention is the highest in the entire company. There is absolutely no rational business argument for denying me this promotion. I reach my right hand down into my structured leather tote bag resting on the floor beside my chair. My fingertips brush against the crisp edge of a thick premium paper envelope. Inside that envelope is my formal 2 weeks' notice. I did not draft it because I actually wanted to leave Vanguard Logistics. I drafted it as leverage. I know how corporate America works, and I know exactly what my presence is worth to their bottom line. I fully expect Kendrick to try and lowball my salary increase today. I expect him to offer me the vice president title with a minimal bump in pay, expecting me to simply be grateful for a seat at the table. My plan is simple and ruthless. If he tries to undercut my value, I am prepared to slide that white envelope across the polished mahogany table, look him dead in the eye, and force him to negotiate for my continued employment. I hold the power in this dynamic, and I am finally ready to use it. I am ready to claim the executive suite I have bled for. Kendrick finally stops tapping his silver pen. He sets it down with a soft click and leans back in his plush leather chair, steepling his fingers together. He looks at me, his expensive smile widening just a fraction, revealing perfectly white teeth. He opens his mouth to speak. In that split second before the words actually leave his lips, a strange, sudden intuition washes over me. It is a cold prickle of warning traveling down the back of my neck, a heavy drop in the pit of my stomach. Every survival instinct I have honed in this corporate shark tank suddenly screams at me to brace for impact. I do not pull the resignation letter out of my bag. I keep my hand perfectly still, my fingers resting lightly against the envelope in the dark. I keep my posture relaxed and my face arranged in a mask of polite anticipation. I sit in the freezing boardroom and wait for my chief executive officer to make his move, completely unaware that the words he is about to speak will shatter my entire reality, set off an irreversible chain reaction of family betrayal, and ultimately force me to burn this entire company to the ground. Kendrick finally opens his mouth and the corporate jargon spills out in a perfectly rehearsed stream. He talks about Vanguard transitioning into a new era of global agility. He talks about synergy, dynamic market shifts, and the need for forward-facing leadership. He uses 50 words to say absolutely nothing of substance. Then he drops the hammer. That is why Kendrick says, flashing that expensive, predatory smile, I am thrilled to announce that effective immediately, the new Vice President of Operations will be Connor. The name hangs in the frigid air of the boardroom. I do not flinch, but the ambient noise of the building seems to completely drop away. Connor, my 35-year-old brother-in-law, the man who married my younger sister Jada 2 years ago, the man who has been a mid-level regional sales manager for a grand total of 14 months. He is sitting at the far end of the table, previously so quiet I had almost forgotten he was invited to this alignment meeting. Now Connor stands up and buttons his tailored suit jacket. He is a man who has built an entire career on mediocre performance and unearned confidence. He has never routed a single freight truck. He does not know the difference between a load-bearing manifest and a supply chain audit. But he has great hair, a firm handshake, and he plays an aggressive game of golf. Connor walks over to my side of the massive mahogany table. His smile is blinding and entirely devoid of actual intellect. He reaches out and actually claps me heavily on the shoulder. The patronizing weight of his hand seeps through the fabric of my blazer. A suffocating wave of cheap cedar and citrus cologne hits my face. I am so excited to partner with you on this, Aaliyah Connor, says his voice dripping with a false, practiced humility. Seriously, I could not do this without you running things on the ground. You keep managing those spreadsheets down in the weeds, and it will free me up to focus on the big picture strategy. We are going to make a great team, managing the spreadsheets. He just reduced 3 years of groundbreaking algorithmic engineering, national infrastructure overhauls, and 8-figure profit margins to managing spreadsheets. I look at his hand resting on my shoulder. Then I look slowly across the table at our chief executive officer. Connor has no operational background, I state. My voice is perfectly level, devoid of the emotional reaction they are both secretly waiting for. The automated infrastructure scaling requires a deep technical understanding of our routing software. It is a highly specialized architecture. Kendrick sighs, giving me a look of practiced, fatherly patience. He steeples his fingers again, leaning forward as if imparting a great wisdom. Aaliyah, we need to look at the enterprise globally, Kendrick says. You are incredible at the granular level. Truly. You are the absolute backbone of the logistics floor. The entire grid relies on your technical oversight. We simply cannot afford to lose you from the day-to-day operations. Moving you up to the C-suite would disrupt our entire workflow. He pauses, letting his voice drop into a lower conspiratorial register. It is the tone men like Kendrick use when they are about to deliver an insult disguised as mentorship. To be completely candid with you, Kendrick continues, the board feels you lack a certain executive presence. Connor has that external-facing charisma. He interfaces seamlessly with our stakeholders, out on the golf course, at the country club, at the charity galas. You are the engine, Aaliyah. We need you running hot in the background. Let Connor handle the driving. The disrespect is so palpable it leaves a metallic taste in my mouth. Executive presence. It is the ultimate corporate dog whistle. It means I do not look like them. It means I do not spend my Friday afternoons drinking expensive scotch and trading favors in exclusive spaces where people who look like me are rarely invited. It means they want my labor, my patents, and my sheer brilliance, but they demand a white man wear the title and collect the staggering executive bonus. I stare at the high-definition monitor behind them. My quarterly projection deck is still glowing on the screen, the custom formatting, the precise data visualizations, the meticulous roadmap for Q4. Connor glances at the screen and nods thoughtfully, putting on a performance of deep strategic contemplation for a chart he could not decipher if his life depended on it. This is a calculated, devastating move. They know exactly what they are doing. They are locking the workhorse firmly inside the stable, ensuring the heavy lifting gets done, while handing the thoroughbred title to a man whose greatest professional achievement was marrying into a family that cares more about status than substance. My family. My mind races, connecting the dots with chilling clarity. Connor did not orchestrate this alone. He does not have the strategic capacity. He leveraged his relationship with Kendrick outside the office. He leveraged the golf games, the dinners, the casual networking that happens exactly where I am not allowed to be. And my sister Jada, the socialite, who worships optics and despises my independence, absolutely knew about this. The golden child's husband just secured a massive promotion built entirely on the scapegoat's blood, sweat, and intellectual property. I can feel Connor's hand still resting near my shoulder, lingering just long enough to establish dominance. He expects me to thank him. Kendrick expects me to accept my place as the grateful backbone. They expect me to swallow my pride, put my head down, and keep generating millions of dollars in revenue so they can take the credit. The envelope inside my leather tote bag suddenly feels incredibly heavy. The 2 weeks' notice I drafted is sitting right there, ready to be deployed. The urge to pull it out, to slam it onto the polished mahogany table, and walk out of this toxic environment forever is almost overwhelming. It would be so easy to raise my voice, to point out the blatant injustice, to demand the respect I have unequivocally earned. But as I look at Connor's smug, unearned smile and Kendrick's patronizing gaze, a cold, razor-sharp clarity washes over my burning anger. If I quit right now, I give them exactly what they want. If I hand in my resignation, Human Resources will trigger my standard 30-day handover clause. I will be legally obligated to sit in a room and teach Connor how to operate the very systems I built. I will be forced to neatly package my genius, hand him the manual, and walk away with a standard severance check while he reaps the financial rewards of my infrastructure for years to come. Quitting is a reaction, and I am no longer interested in reacting. I am interested in dismantling. My fingers loosen their grip on the thick, textured paper of the envelope. I let it slip from my grasp, allowing it to fall harmlessly against the bottom of my leather tote bag. The sound it makes is entirely silent, but in my mind it rings like a starting gun. Kendrick is still sitting across the polished mahogany table, steepling his fingers, waiting for the outburst. He wants me to raise my voice. He wants the angry stereotype to manifest right here in his pristine, temperature-controlled boardroom so he can internally justify this profound disrespect. He wants me to prove that I lack that elusive, highly subjective executive presence he just used to pass me over. Connor is standing far too close to me, his heavy, patronizing hand still hovering near my shoulder. He expects me to shrink. He expects me to look down, swallow my pride, and accept my designated place in the Vanguard logistics hierarchy. If I pull that resignation letter out of my bag right now, I know exactly how the next 30 days will play out. Human resources will process my departure with clinical efficiency. Kendrick will immediately invoke the standard executive handover clause buried deep in my employment contract. I will be chained to my desk for 4 miserable weeks, forced to painstakingly translate 3 years of complex algorithmic supply chain engineering into color-coded pie charts, simple enough for my brother-in-law to understand. I will become the architect of my own replacement. I will be forced to neatly package my genius, hand him the manual, and walk away with a standard severance check while he reaps the financial rewards of my infrastructure for years to come. I refuse to give them a smooth transition. I refuse to be the invisible bridge they walk across to reach their unearned success. Quitting right now is a reaction and emotional response to an ambush, and I am no longer interested in reacting. I am interested in dismantling. I take a slow, measured breath, drawing the frigid air of the executive suite into my lungs. I push my chair back, the wheels gliding smoothly over the plush carpet. I stand up to my full height, making sure my posture is absolute perfection. I reach down and casually smooth out the front of my tailored blazer, erasing a microscopic wrinkle with deliberate, agonizing slowness. I turn my head and look directly into Connor's eyes. I do not look at Kendrick. Kendrick may be the orchestrator of this betrayal, but Connor is the weak link, the fragile beneficiary, and I want Connor to feel the full crushing weight of my gaze. I let a smile spread across my face. It is not a warm smile. It is a dazzling, razor-sharp expression, the kind of smile that shows all your teeth, but leaves your eyes entirely cold. It is a smile that belongs at the head of a boardroom table. Congratulations, Connor, I say. My voice is smooth, rich, and perfectly modulated. There is not a single tremor of disappointment or anger to be found in my tone. I truly cannot wait to see your strategy in action. The silence that follows my words is heavy, dense, and deeply uncomfortable. I can see the immediate visceral confusion wash over Connor's face. His unearned, arrogant grin falters just for a fraction of a second, revealing the profound insecurity hiding right beneath his tailored suit. He was completely prepared for resistance. He had braced himself for me to argue about performance metrics, revenue generation, and fairness. He was absolutely not prepared for my complete chilling compliance. Even Kendrick looks unsettled. He drops his hands to the table, his posture stiffening, his expensive smile fading into a look of wary suspicion. They both thought they had me cornered. They thought I would react like a desperate, overworked employee clinging to her job. I do not wait for either of them to formulate a response. I turn on my heel, the sound of my stilettos striking the hardwood floor just beyond the carpeted area, ringing out with absolute authority. I walk toward the heavy glass door, push it open, and step out into the hallway. I do not look back. I leave them sitting in their freezing room, surrounded by my data, entirely unaware that the ground beneath their feet has just been hollowed out. The walk from the executive suite back to my office on the operations floor takes exactly 3 minutes. I use that time to let my new reality settle into my bones. The anger that was boiling in my veins just moments ago has completely evaporated, replaced by a cold, calculating focus that sharpens everything around me. I step out of the elevator and walk past the rows of cubicles. I pass the glowing monitors displaying real-time freight tracking across the country. I hear the dispatchers speaking rapidly into their headsets, redirecting trucks, managing load distributions, keeping the lifeblood of this company flowing. This is my domain. I know every pulse and rhythm of this floor. For the past 3 years, I have looked at this massive department as a highly complex machine that I needed to keep running at all costs. I absorbed the extreme stress, the late nights, the impossible shipping deadlines, because I genuinely believed my loyalty and innovation would lead to an equitable reward. Now I look at the logistics floor with completely different eyes. I do not see a machine I have to maintain. I see a weapon that is fully loaded and waiting for me to pull the trigger. I reach my office, close the heavy door behind me, and lock it. I walk over to my desk and drop my leather tote bag onto the chair. The envelope containing my resignation letter is still inside, buried safely out of sight. It will stay there. Quitting is a defensive move. Quitting is what you do when you accept defeat. I am not defeated. Kendrick and Connor think they have just played a brilliant game of corporate chess. They believe they have secured the company's future while keeping me comfortably subjugated in the background to handle the actual labor. They want my brother-in-law to run the operations. They want him to be the forward-facing leader of Vanguard Logistics. I am going to let him. I am going to step back and give him exactly what he asked for. I am going to hand him the total unmitigated responsibility of a nationwide supply chain network that he fundamentally does not understand. They have completely overlooked the fact that I am the sole compliant signatory for our primary routing vendors. I am the only person in this building with the master access keys and the foundational understanding of the automated infrastructure that keeps our trucks moving. I am the ghost in the machine they so desperately rely on to hit their quarterly margins. They have no idea that they have just handed the keys to a commercial airliner to a man who does not even know how to read the instrument panel. I sit down at my desk, wake up my computer, and stare at the glowing Vanguard logo on my screen. I lean back in my chair, steepled my fingers just like Kendrick did, and allow a genuine, quiet laugh to escape my lips. The ticking time bomb has just been planted, the countdown has officially started, and I am the only person in the building who can hear it ticking. The wrought iron gates of my parents' estate in Buckhead swing open, welcoming me into the meticulously manicured world of Reverend Julian and Vivian. The circular driveway is lined with imported hydrangeas and luxury vehicles, including the brand new Range Rover my sister Jada convinced Connor to lease last month. I park my practical sedan near the garage, taking a moment to breathe in the humid Atlanta air. Today is Sunday. In this family, Sunday is not a day of rest. It is a day of performance. I walk up the brick steps and push open the heavy oak front door. Instantly, the rich, savory smell of my mother's slowly roasted pot roast hits me, mingled with the sharp scent of lemon floor polish and expensive lilies. The house is a monument to my father's megachurch success. Vaulted ceilings, sweeping staircases, and walls lined with photographs that tell a very specific, carefully curated story. In every frame, Jada is smiling perfectly, usually holding a trophy or standing beside her husband. I am present in exactly 3 pictures, usually standing in the background, looking like an employee who wandered into the frame by accident. Voices drift from the formal dining room. I follow the sound of booming laughter and clinking crystal. When I step through the arched doorway, the visual hierarchy of my family is put on full unapologetic display. The dining table is massive, carved from solid walnut and set with Vivian's fine china. At the absolute head of the table sits Connor. He is leaning back in the plush, high-backed armchair, usually reserved for my father, holding a glass of the vintage Bordeaux I brought over for the holidays last year. Jada sits immediately to his right, wearing a silk dress that costs more than my monthly mortgage, her hand resting possessively on his shoulder. My father, Reverend Julian, sits to his left, beaming at his white son-in-law with a level of pride he has never once directed at his own flesh and blood. "Aaliyah, you finally made it," my mother says. Vivian emerges from the kitchen carrying a silver gravy boat. She is wearing her Sunday best, her hair immaculately pressed, her expression set in that familiar mask of maternal condescension. "I did not think you would show up today, given how busy you always are down in the dirt. I brought a bottle of wine," I say, my voice perfectly level, handing it to her. "I would not miss a family celebration." Vivian takes the bottle, glances at the label, and sets it on the sideboard with a polite but dismissive nod. "Take your seat, Aaliyah. We are about to say grace." I look toward the table. There is an empty chair next to Jada, bathed in the warm light of the chandelier. I take a step toward it, but my mother steps into my path, a sugary smile plastered on her face. "Oh, not there, sweetheart," Vivian says, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "I need that spot open so I can serve the roast easily. You take the seat down at the end, right by the swinging kitchen door. You know how drafty it gets over there, and Connor needs the legroom up here. He has had such a big week." I look at the seat she is pointing to. It is cramped, pushed dangerously close to the heavy wooden door that leads to the kitchen. It is the seat you give to a misbehaving child or an unwanted guest. I look back at my mother. I do not argue. I do not point out that Connor is only 2 inches taller than me. I simply nod, walk the length of the table, and pull out the chair. I sit down, folding my hands in my lap. Jada watches me from the other end of the table, her perfectly glossed lips curving into a smug, satisfied smirk. She loves this. She thrives on these microscopic moments of humiliation. For her entire life, Jada has viewed my existence as a competitive sport, where the only way she can win is if I explicitly lose. "Let us bow our heads," my father booms, raising his large hands. The table falls silent. Connor lowers his head, attempting to look pious, though I can see him checking a notification on his smartwatch under the table. "Heavenly Father." Julian begins, his voice resonant and theatrical, tailored for an audience of thousands, but currently weaponized for an audience of 5. "We come before you today to give thanks for your abundant blessings. We thank you for the food on this table prepared by the loving hands of my beautiful wife. And Lord, today we offer a special prayer of gratitude for Connor. We thank you for elevating him, for recognizing his hard work, and for bringing true leadership and provision into this family. We ask that you guide his hand as he takes on this massive new responsibility at his company. Bless his strategic mind, bless his path forward. And Lord, we pray for those who support him in the background, that they may find peace in their humble duties. Amen." Amen, Jada and Vivian echo in unison. I keep my eyes open the entire time. The prayer was not a communication with God. It was a press release. It was a direct, calculated slight, aimed squarely at my independence, my career, and my lack of a husband. My father values Connor's corporate title over my actual labor because Connor fits the aesthetic of success that Julian preaches from the pulpit. A powerful man providing for a beautiful, submissive wife. I do not fit their narrative. I am a single, independent Black woman who builds automated infrastructure. I am a complication they tolerate. The silver domes are lifted, and the meal begins. The clatter of silverware against fine china fills the room. Connor takes a large bite of the roast, chewing enthusiastically. "This is incredible," Vivian Connor says, washing it down with my wine. "Seriously, best meal I have had all month. The corporate dining room at Vanguard has nothing on you." Vivian practically glows under the praise. "Well, you need your strength, Connor. Vice President of Operations. It sounds so distinguished. We are just bursting with pride." She turns her gaze down the long table, locking eyes with me. The warmth completely vanishes from her face, replaced by a sharp, probing curiosity. "So, Aaliyah," Vivian says, her voice carrying easily over the clinking glasses. "Connor tells us you will be reporting directly to him now. That must be quite an adjustment. Are you still working down in the warehouses with the truck drivers?" The table goes quiet. Jada leans forward, practically vibrating with anticipation. This is the moment they have been waiting for all afternoon. They want me to snap. They want me to complain about the unfairness of the promotion so they can label me bitter and jealous. They want to paint me as the angry, resentful older sister who cannot be happy for her golden sibling husband. I pick up my crystal water goblet. I take a slow, deliberate sip. The water is ice cold, and it matches the exact temperature of my blood. I look at my mother, then at my sister, and finally at Connor, who is currently struggling to cut a piece of gristle from his steak. "I am exactly where I need to be, Mother," I say smoothly, setting the glass down without making a sound. The warehouses are where the actual money is made. Someone has to keep the engines running. I let the disrespect wash over me like water off a stone. I do not absorb their insults. I collect them. Every condescending remark, every smug smile, every deliberate attempt to minimize my existence is just adding fuel to the absolute inferno I am about to unleash on their lives. They are celebrating a victory that is built entirely on a foundation of sand, and I am the only one holding the shovel. Jada catches my comment about keeping the engines running and immediately deploys her signature weapon. She sighs a delicate and highly practiced sound that manages to convey both pity and superiority in a single breath. She rests her chin on her perfectly manicured hand, tilting her head as she looks down the length of the dining table at me. The diamonds on her wrist catch the light of the chandelier. You say that Aaliyah Jada begins her voice dripping with a syrupy, venomous sympathy, but you just always look so incredibly stressed. We worry about you. Working yourself to the bone down in those warehouses, managing all those blue-collar drivers living all alone? It just takes a toll. You look exhausted today. She pauses to let the insult land, ensuring everyone at the table registers her assessment of my appearance and my lifestyle. I do not touch my face. I do not defend my skincare routine or the fact that I am wearing a tailored silk blouse while she is draped in clothes her husband bought using the salary I practically subsidized. I just look at her, my face a mask of placid attention. That is exactly why Connor and I were talking last night. Jada continues turning her brilliant, adoring gaze toward her husband. I told him that now that he has the real power at the company, he needs to look out for his big sister. Connor is so sweet. He agreed right away. He is going to create a little mid-level role for you. Something comfortable. Something where you can just sit at a desk and not worry about all that heavy lifting. We want to make sure you have job security now that they are clearing out the old management. The absolute audacity of her statement hangs over the roasted carrots and garlic mashed potatoes. A little mid-level role. Job security. She is framing my demotion, my subjection to her incompetent husband as an act of familial charity. She is painting Connor as a benevolent savior, reaching down to rescue the struggling unmarried sister who cannot quite keep up in the corporate world. Connor chuckles a deep, resonant sound meant to project humble authority. He reaches for his wine glass. It is the 2010 vintage Bordeaux that I brought to the house. I selected it, specifically paid $300 for it, and handed it to my mother when I arrived. Connor takes a generous gulp, swallowing it without even tasting the notes, treating an exquisite vintage like cheap table wine. Jada is exaggerating my generosity, Connor says, wiping his mouth with a linen napkin. But she is right about the restructuring. The truth is, Vanguard has been coasting for years. I was looking over the operational flow this morning. The infrastructure down there is completely archaic. It is a miracle the routing systems function at all with those legacy bottlenecks. My first order of business as vice president is a total modernization of the grid. I watch him swirl the dark red wine in his crystal glass. He is sitting at my father's table drinking my wine and taking absolute credit for my life's work right in front of my face. The archaic infrastructure he is referring to is the state-of-the-art predictive algorithmic routing software that I personally developed, coded, and patented. It is the most advanced logistical framework in the southeastern United States. It is the singular reason Vanguard Logistics has not filed for bankruptcy in the face of rising fuel costs and supply chain shortages. Connor does not even know the name of the software. He does not know how to run a basic diagnostic query. He read a summary brief prepared by a junior analyst, memorized the words legacy bottlenecks, and decided he was an industry visionary. Reverend Julian leans forward, his heavy forearms resting on the edge of the mahogany table. His eyes shine with profound respect as he looks at his son-in-law. That is what true leadership looks like, Connor, my father says, his voice vibrating with the cadence of a Sunday sermon. Recognizing the rot in the foundation and having the courage to tear it down and build it anew. Vanguard. Logistics is incredibly blessed to have a man of your caliber steering the ship. A strong man who understands vision. My father nods sagely, cutting a piece of his roast. It takes a certain kind of mind to see the big picture. Some folks are built for labor, and there is no shame in honest labor. But leadership requires a man who can see over the horizon. I am proud to have you sitting at the head of this table. My mother murmurs her agreement, her eyes darting to me to ensure I am appropriately humbled by the exchange. I sit at the cramped end of the table backed against the swinging kitchen door, and I feel a profound, absolute stillness settle into my bones. For years, I carried a small, stubborn knot of guilt deep in my chest whenever I considered walking away from Vanguard. I worried about the drivers who relied on my schedules. I worried about the dispatchers I had trained. I even worried foolishly about maintaining the peace in this family. I always believed that if I just worked hard enough, if I generated enough revenue, if I proved my undeniable brilliance, my parents would eventually look at me the way they look at Connor right now. That lingering hope dies right here over a plate of lukewarm pot roast. I observe my family not as a daughter or a sister, but as an apex predator studying its prey. My father respects a corporate title handed to a white man more than he respects the blood, sweat, and undeniable genius of his own black daughter. My mother weaponizes tradition to keep me small, terrified that my independence somehow threatens her worldview. And my sister has wrapped her entire identity in the unearned accomplishments of a man who is about to drive their lives off a financial cliff. Connor laughs again, basking in the glow of my father's validation. He takes another large sip of my wine. "I will make sure Aaliyah is taken care of," Julian Connor promises, leaning back in the chair with an air of complete supremacy. "We will find a nice quiet reporting role for her, streamline her duties, get her out of the warehouse dirt." The sheer audacity of their performance solidifies my resolve into something unbreakable. There is no turning back. Any remaining hesitation I had about triggering the compliance loophole evaporates entirely. They want to strip away my authority. They want to claim my infrastructure as their own. They want to reduce my brilliant, complex career into a charity case to make themselves feel powerful. I am going to let them try. I am going to hand Connor the steering wheel to a machine that is currently rigged with high explosives, and I am going to watch him turn the key. I keep my hands perfectly steady. I do not grip my silverware too tightly. I do not let the cold fury rising in my chest reflect in my eyes. I simply smile. It is a soft, agreeable expression that completely masks the devastation I am currently orchestrating in my mind. I wait for a lull in the conversation. I wait for Connor to finish chewing a piece of meat, reveling in the warm, supportive echo chamber of my parents' dining room. Then I decide it is time to test the absolute limits of his ignorance before I spring the trap. I slice into my steak with surgical precision. The knife glides smoothly against the fine china, a quiet metallic scrape that grounds me in the physical reality of the dining room. I let the conversation flow around me for another 10 minutes, biding my time. I listen to Jada complain about the interior designer she hired for her sunroom. I listen to Vivian outline the upcoming renovations for the church fellowship hall. I wait until Connor finishes recounting a long, self-congratulatory story to my father about a recent golf outing with one of Vanguard Logistics' major investors. He takes a breath, reaching for his water glass, visibly satisfied with the attentive audience he has captivated. The lull in the conversation is perfectly timed. "Connor," I say, projecting my voice just enough to command the table. My tone is perfectly pitched. It holds the bright, supportive cadence of an eager subordinate seeking guidance from her new visionary leader. "Since you are spearheading this massive restructuring, I am curious how you plan to navigate the upcoming compliance renewal for Apex Solutions next Friday." The entire table goes quiet. Jada immediately bristles, her eyes narrowing as she glares at me from the head of the table. She hates when corporate matters invade her Sunday dinners, especially when the topic risks making her husband look anything less than omnipotent. My mother sighs softly, a clear signal of her disapproval that I am bringing warehouse talk to her elegant table. But Connor is the one I am watching. I see the immediate, microscopic physical tells. His jaw tightens. His pupils dilate just a fraction. He sets his water glass down a little too quickly, the ice clinking sharply against the crystal rim. He blinks, his mind scrambling frantically through the shallow archives of the operational summaries he skimmed earlier that week. He does not know the name Apex Solutions. He has absolutely no idea that Apex Solutions is the vendor providing the core automated routing software for our entire national fleet. He does not know that Apex is the digital heartbeat of Vanguard Logistics, managing the logistical load distributions, the weather pattern algorithms, and the federal compliance reporting for every single truck we put on the highway. And most importantly, he has absolutely no idea that Apex Solutions is a blind LLC that I personally founded, patented, and licensed to the company. Connor clears his throat, adjusting the collar of his expensive dress shirt. He attempts a confident, relaxed smile, but the edges of it are incredibly brittle. Well, Aaliyah Connor begins leaning back in my father's chair and steepling his fingers in a poor imitation of Kendrick. That is an excellent question. As we transition into this new phase of global agility, we really need to look hard at vendor consolidation. I take a slow bite of my steak, chewing thoughtfully as I watch him dig his own grave. Right now, Vanguard is bogged down by too many disparate partnerships. Connor continues his voice, gaining a false bravado as he leans into the comfortable rhythm of meaningless corporate jargon. We need to streamline our operational output. When we talk about modernization, we are talking about creating synergy across all our verticals. We cannot afford to be held hostage by legacy vendors who are not aligning with our new dynamic framework. He gestures vaguely with his hands, outlining a strategy made entirely of thin air. If this Apex group cannot offer us a more streamlined, cost-effective synergy, then we will simply have to cut the fat, Connor declares, looking directly at my father for validation. We will phase out redundant silos and bring our routing into a more integrated, agile ecosystem. Reverend Julian nods slowly, his face a picture of profound respect. That is exactly the kind of decisive action this family values, Connor. Do not let the old ways slow down your progress. Trim the branches so the tree can grow. My mother murmurs a soft sound of agreement, looking proudly at her son-in-law. It takes every ounce of discipline I possess not to burst into laughter right there in the dining room. Connor just used the words synergy, streamlining, and vendor consolidation to mask the fact that he has not read a single vendor file. He just confidently declared in front of witnesses that he is prepared to cut the fat and phase out the exact proprietary software that keeps Vanguard Logistics from collapsing into total operational paralysis. He just handed me the loaded gun, pointed it directly at his own chest, and begged me to pull the trigger. I do not correct him. I do not explain that phasing out Apex Solutions would violate federal shipping compliance within 48 hours. I do not warn him that the renewal deadline is a hard cutoff, and without my authorized signature as the compliance liaison, the system will automatically lock down the national grid. Instead, I set my fork and knife down across my plate. I pick up my linen napkin and dab the corners of my mouth with slow, deliberate precision. I place the napkin on the table and look directly at my younger sister. Jada is practically glowing, her hand resting on Connor's arm, radiating the smug satisfaction of a woman who believes she has backed the winning horse. You must be so incredibly proud of him, Jada, I say. My voice is chillingly sweet, soft as velvet, and sharp as glass. He really is going to change everything at Vanguard. The modernization he is planning will be something nobody there will ever forget. Jada smiles, tossing her hair over her shoulder. We are all proud of him, Aaliyah. It is just nice to finally have some real strategic vision in the family. I hold her gaze for a long moment, letting the absolute certainty of my impending victory settle deep into my bones. Then I push my chair back from the table and stand up. This dinner has been wonderful, Mother, I say, directing my attention to Vivian. Thank you for hosting. But I am afraid I need to excuse myself. I have a very early start tomorrow morning. There is quite a lot of operational restructuring I need to prepare for. Vivian waves her hand dismissively, barely looking up from her plate. Always rushing off to work. Well, drive safely, Aaliyah. Do not forget your Tupperware on the way out. I do not take the Tupperware. I do not say goodbye to my father, who is already deep in a new conversation with Connor about golf handicaps. I simply turn and walk out of the formal dining room, my heels clicking sharply against the polished hardwood floors. I step out the heavy oak front door into the muggy Atlanta evening. The humid air wraps around me as I walk down the brick steps toward my car. I unlock the door, slide into the driver's seat, and grip the steering wheel. The trap is officially set. The bait has been taken. Connor has authorized his own destruction, And Kendrick has enabled the entire catastrophe by handing the keys to a man who relies on buzzwords to survive. Tomorrow morning, I am going to walk into human resources. I am going to execute a pivot so legally airtight and structurally devastating that Vanguard Logistics will not even realize they are bleeding out until the lifeblood of their company hits the floor. I start the engine pull out of the circular driveway and leave my parents' sprawling estate behind me in the rearview mirror. I drive home in total silence, the road ahead illuminated by my headlights, a clear, straight path to absolute ruin. Monday morning at Vanguard Logistics always hums with a specific kind of manufactured urgency. The air on the executive floor smells like expensive dark roast coffee and anxiety. Employees are rushing between cubicles carrying stacks of printed manifests, desperately trying to get ahead of the weekly supply chain bottlenecks. I step out of the elevator at exactly 8 in the morning, wearing a tailored charcoal suit and a perfectly neutral expression. I do not turn left toward the operations floor. I do not walk toward my office where my team is already waiting for the morning briefing. Instead, I turn right and walk directly into the Human Resources Department. The HR director is a woman named Brenda. She is a rigid, deeply entrenched corporate loyalist who views the employee handbook as a sacred text. She is meticulously organized and entirely lacking in imagination, which makes her the perfect instrument for my plan. Brenda looks up from her dual monitors as I step into her office and close the glass door behind me. She offers a polite, questioning smile, expecting me to ask about new hire onboarding or payroll discrepancies for my warehouse staff. I take a seat across from her desk. I open my briefcase and slide a single sheet of premium paper across her immaculate desk. Last month, anticipating the upcoming vice president promotions, I submitted a preliminary letter of resignation to Kendrick. It was a standard corporate maneuver, a carefully calculated risk, designed to force his hand and trigger a salary negotiation before the new titles were announced. He assumed it was a bluff, an emotional reaction from an overworked employee. Today, I am formally retracting that leverage. Brenda picks up the document, adjusting her reading glasses. She reads the brief, legally binding statement I drafted over the weekend. It officially cancels my preliminary notice and confirms my intent to remain an active full-time employee at Vanguard Logistics. I will go ahead and process this retraction, Brenda says, tapping her perfectly manicured fingernails against her keyboard. I am sure Kendrick will be relieved. We all know operations would fall apart if you actually left us. She has no idea how accurate her assessment is. I offer a brief agreeable nod, waiting for her to officially log the cancellation into the employee database. The moment I hear the soft chime of the system confirming my status has been updated and locked, I reach into my briefcase a second time. By maintaining my active employment status, I retain something far more valuable than a salary. I retain my security clearance. More importantly, I remain the sole compliant signatory for Vanguard's automated systems. My digital signature is the only one on file that is legally authorized to approve software integrations and federal freight compliance for our primary routing vendors. If I had quit my contract, stipulated a mandatory 30-day handover period during which I would be legally forced to transfer those signing rights to my successor. By staying, I keep the keys to the kingdom firmly in my pocket. I slide a thick manila folder across the desk. Brenda looks at it, her professional smile faltering slightly at the sheer volume of paperwork inside. I need you to process these immediately, I say, my voice steady and professional. Effective at 5 o'clock this evening, I am invoking my accrued paid sabbatical to be taken concurrently with an extended leave of absence under the Family and Medical Leave Act. Brenda freezes, her hands hovering above her keyboard. She blinks, trying to process the sudden shift in the conversation. She opens the folder and begins flipping through the documents. Inside is a comprehensive ironclad medical directive from my primary care physician and a licensed psychiatrist. The paperwork details severe occupational burnout, chronic stress, and acute mental health distress resulting from a hostile work environment. It mandates an immediate total separation from all work-related duties. Coupled with the 6 months of executive sabbatical I have accrued but never touched over the last 3 years, the paperwork guarantees my absence for the foreseeable future. Brenda stammers, looking genuinely bewildered. This is highly irregular. 6 months. You manage the entire national grid. I cannot just approve a total operational blackout for our senior director without consulting Kendrick and the executive board first. You do not need to consult anyone, Brenda, I reply, keeping my tone perfectly even. The Family and Medical Leave Act is federal law. The documentation is complete, verified, and legally binding. My accrued sabbatical is a guaranteed benefit outlined in my employment contract. You are not approving my leave. You are simply processing the paperwork. Brenda stares at the physician's signatures, the color slowly draining from her face as the reality of the situation sets in. She is a creature of compliance, and she knows exactly what these documents mean. Federal employment law is incredibly strict regarding medical leave. Once this paperwork is filed, Vanguard Logistics is legally paralyzed. They cannot fire me because terminating an employee who has just invoked FMLA for mental health reasons is a guaranteed multi-million-dollar retaliation lawsuit. They cannot replace me permanently because my position must be held open by law. And most importantly, they are legally prohibited from contacting me. If Kendrick Connor, or anyone else from the executive team, calls my personal phone, sends me an email, or attempts to force me to perform any work-related duties while I am on medical leave, they are committing a federal violation. I am completely legally untouchable. I have built a fortress out of their own corporate policies and locked myself safely inside. I need you to timestamp the receipt of those documents, I tell Brenda, watching her hands tremble slightly as she reaches for her official date stamp. And I need a physical copy for my personal records before I leave this office. Brenda presses the stamp onto the top page with a heavy final thud. She hands me the copy, her eyes wide with the dawning realization that the company is about to lose its central pillar without any warning or preparation. I will inform Kendrick and Connor as soon as you leave, Brenda says, her voice tight with panic. They are going to want a transition plan, Aaliyah. Who is taking over the vendor approvals? Who has your master passwords? Connor is the new vice president of operations, I say, standing up and sliding the stamped copy into my briefcase. He assured the entire family yesterday that he has a brilliant strategy for modernization. I am sure a man of his caliber will have absolutely no trouble managing the transition. My leave begins at exactly 5 o'clock. I turn and walk out of the Human Resources office. The heavy glass door clicks shut behind me, sealing the first lock on the cage. The air on the executive floor suddenly feels remarkably light. I walk back toward the operations wing with a renewed sense of purpose. The defensive perimeter is fully established. My employment is secure, my legal shield is active, and my complete unavailability is mandated by federal law. Now, I have exactly 8 hours left on the clock to return to my desk, access the main portal, and set the final piece of the trap in motion. I navigate the labyrinth of the operations floor with a measured, deliberate pace. The chaotic symphony of the logistics department surrounds me, ringing telephones, the rapid clatter of keyboards, the low hum of dispatchers negotiating freight rates with drivers across 3 different time zones. It is a high-stress environment that breaks most managers within 6 months. I have thrived in it for 3 years. I know the name of every dispatcher I pass. I know whose kid just made the honor roll and whose parent is in the hospital. I have been their shield against the unrealistic demands of the executive suite, absorbing the pressure so they could actually do their jobs. Today, I am putting down the shield. I step into my office and let the heavy glass door click shut, sealing out the noise of the floor. My workspace is an exercise in absolute precision. Dual oversized monitors dominate my desk, displaying cascading streams of real-time data from our national trucking fleet. I slide into my chair and wake up my system. I have exactly 8 hours before my federally protected medical leave activates, but I do not need 8 hours to bring Vanguard Logistics to its knees. I only need about 10 minutes. I open my email client. Sitting right at the top of my inbox, marked with high priority, is an unread message from Connor. The subject line reads, Q4 Operational Budget Streamlining. Connor is eager. He has been the vice president of operations for less than 24 hours, and he is already trying to leave his mark. He wants to prove to Kendrick and to my father that he is the visionary leader they praised at Sunday dinner. He wants to show them he can trim the fat and boost the profit margins before the ink on his new business cards is even dry. I open the attached spreadsheet and a cold, genuine smile spreads across my face. Connor's new budget is a masterpiece of profound, staggering incompetence. It is exactly what happens when a man who has only ever read executive summaries tries to operate the actual machinery. He has gone through the departmental ledger with a machete indiscriminately slashing line items he does not understand simply because they look expensive. He has gutted the overtime allowance for the weekend warehouse crews. He has reduced the emergency maintenance fund for the aging forklift fleet. But the most beautiful, catastrophic mistake sits on row 42. Connor has completely zeroed out the quarterly licensing renewal fee for Apex Solutions. In the notes column beside the deletion, Connor has typed a brief, arrogant justification, consolidating redundant third-party routing vendors to transition into a unified, agile internal ecosystem, cutting legacy bottlenecks. Legacy. He actually used the exact buzzwords from my parents' dining room table. He genuinely believes that Apex Solutions is just another overpriced software subscription, like an outdated spreadsheet tool or an unnecessary email client. He looked at the massive seven-figure licensing fee, realized he could not explain what it did, and decided to cut it to make his bottom line look brilliant for his first board meeting. He does not know that Apex Solutions is the digital heartbeat of this entire corporation. The software does not just tell trucks where to go. It is a highly complex predictive algorithmic grid. It monitors Federal Department of Transportation compliance regulations in real time, ensuring our drivers do not violate maximum driving hours. It connects directly to the electronic logging devices in every single cab. It tracks weather patterns across the continental United States, automatically rerouting hazardous materials away from severe storms. It balances the weight distribution of commercial freight across thousands of pallets to prevent way station fines. Without Apex Solutions, Vanguard Logistics is not a functioning supply chain company. Without it, they are just a collection of blind, deaf trucks sitting idle in parking lots, bleeding millions of dollars an hour. And there is a second, far more dangerous fact that Connor and Kendrick are entirely ignorant of. Apex Solutions is not a faceless tech conglomerate based out of Silicon Valley. Apex Solutions is a blind, limited liability company registered in Delaware. It is a corporate entity that I personally founded, funded, and incorporated 3 years ago. When I first took over this department, I saw the catastrophic failures in Vanguard's legacy routing systems. I went to Kendrick and asked for the resources to build an internal, automated grid. Kendrick denied my request, telling me that operations was a cost center, not an innovation hub, and explicitly ordered me to work with what I had. So I did exactly what he asked. I went home. I spent 8 months coding the predictive algorithm on my own time using my own hardware completely separate from Vanguard's network. I secured the patents under my maiden name and transferred the intellectual property to a holding company, completely shielding my identity behind ironclad corporate privacy laws. Once the software was fully operational and legally protected, I presented a solution to Vanguard's executive board. I told them I had found a third-party vendor capable of fixing our supply chain hemorrhage. The board reviewed the capabilities, saw the projected savings, and eagerly signed a massive multi-year licensing contract with Apex Solutions. I legally disclosed to HR that I held outside investments, a standard corporate formality they barely skimmed and filed away. They never looked hard enough to realize that the genius vendor saving their company was sitting in a cubicle right down the hall. For 3 years, I have been Vanguard's dedicated employee, during the day keeping their floors running smoothly. And for 3 years, I have been Vanguard's most critical, highly paid software vendor in the background. The arrangement is perfectly legal, flawlessly executed, and has made me quietly, independently wealthy. The licensing contract Vanguard signed with Apex Solutions is incredibly strict. I designed it that way to protect my intellectual property. The contract requires a 30-day written notice for termination. More importantly, it features an automated security protocol. If Vanguard fails to pay the quarterly renewal fee, or if unauthorized users attempt to bypass the software's security infrastructure to alter the code, the system triggers an immediate, non-negotiable defensive lockout. The software simply unplugs itself from Vanguard's servers to protect its proprietary data. The renewal invoice is due this Friday. I stare at Connor's budget on my screen. By zeroing out the payment, Connor has officially mandated a breach of contract. By claiming he will integrate the software into an internal ecosystem, he is signaling his intent to have his incompetent IT buddies try to dismantle and absorb my patented, highly encrypted code. All this budget needs to become official company policy is a compliance authorization signature. My signature. As the Senior Director of Global Supply Chain, I hold the sole fiduciary authority to approve operational vendor changes. If I reject Connor's budget, I save Vanguard Logistics. I force Connor to revise his numbers. I protect the Apex contract and I keep the trucks moving. I continue to be the invisible backbone cleaning up the messes made by the men who take the credit. I rest my hand on my ergonomic mouse. I move the cursor across the screen, hovering over the green authorization button at the bottom of the portal. I think about Kendrick telling me I lack executive presence. I think about Connor resting his heavy hand on my shoulder, patronizing me while claiming the rewards of my labor. I think about my mother at Sunday dinner, deliberately shoving me into the corner by the kitchen door, while she praised the mediocre white man sitting in my father's chair. I think about the look of smug superiority on my sister's face as she offered me a mid-level desk job out of charity. I do not feel anger anymore. I feel a profound cold exhilaration. I click the mouse. The system chimes softly. A notification pops up on the screen: operational budget approved, authorization logged. I just legally authorized Vanguard Logistics to breach a multi-million-dollar contract with my own company. I just gave Connor the exact rope he requested to hang himself, and I tied the knot for him. By approving this document, I have initiated a chain of events that no one in this building has the technical capacity to stop. When the system attempts to process the vendor payments on Friday, Apex Solutions will register the default. When Connor's team inevitably tries to brute force their way into the software to find out why the routing grids are failing my security protocols, will register the unauthorized intrusion. The master kill switch will automatically engage. I lean back in my chair staring at the confirmation screen. I download a timestamped encrypted copy of the approved budget verifying my compliance authorization and secure it in my personal cloud drive. I now possess undeniable proof that the new Vice President of Operations mandated the breach and the Executive Board empowered him to do it. I glance at the digital clock in the corner of my monitor. I have plenty of time left before my medical leave takes effect. I spend the next few hours clearing my personal files, wiping my browser history, and preparing my departure with surgical cleanliness. I leave the desk immaculate. I leave the operations floor humming with its usual chaotic energy. I leave Vanguard Logistics completely unshielded, fully operational, and driving at top speed toward a solid brick wall. The digital clock in the lower right corner of my monitor flips to 4:55. The numbers look ordinary to anyone else, but to me, they signal the absolute end of an era. I watch the pixels shift and take a slow, deep breath. The air in my office is still and quiet, contrasting sharply with the relentless hum of the operations floor just outside my glass walls. I reach out and close the final open window on my desktop. The screen clears, leaving only the standard Vanguard Logistics corporate background, a bland blue and gray geometric pattern that suddenly looks incredibly fragile. I move my mouse one last time and click log out. The system chimes a cheerful little sequence of notes that I have heard thousands of times before. Today it sounds like a starting pistol. I reach into my pocket and pull out my company-issued smartphone. It is a high-end model tethered directly to the Vanguard Secure Network. For 3 years, this device has been a digital leash, tying me to every crisis, every delayed shipment, and every executive demand, regardless of the hour or the day. It buzzes in my palm right now, displaying a new email notification from Connor. The subject line contains words like synergy and urgent. I do not open the message. I do not swipe the notification away. I hold down the power button on the side of the device and watch the screen go completely black. I open the bottom drawer of my mahogany desk, slide the dead phone inside, and push the drawer shut. The solid thud of the wood closing feels like a vault sealing shut. My desk is entirely immaculate. There are no framed photographs of family members because my family never gave me memories worth framing. There are no personalized coffee mugs or quirky desk toys. I never treated this office like a home. I treated it like a command center, and a commander does not leave a trace of weakness behind when she evacuates the battlefield. I pick up my leather tote bag and stand up. I smooth the lines of my charcoal suit, making sure every angle of my presentation remains flawless. I walk to the heavy glass door, turn off the overhead lights, and step out onto the floor. I pull the door shut behind me and hear the satisfying heavy click of the automatic lock engaging. The operations floor is a chaotic symphony of end-of-day panic. Dispatchers are shouting into their headsets, negotiating last-minute freight rates, and trying to secure drivers for the overnight hauls. Junior analysts are speed-walking between cubicles carrying stacks of printed manifests. The air smells of stale coffee, printer toner, and the raw, nervous energy of people who are severely underpaid for the stress they absorb. I walk down the central aisle with a slow, measured pace. I do not rush. Rushing implies anxiety, and I have absolutely nothing left to be anxious about. I look at the massive digital tracking boards mounted high on the walls. They display the real-time locations of thousands of Vanguard trucks moving across the national grid. Little green dots moving smoothly along the interstates, guided perfectly by the Apex Solutions algorithm. The system is humming. It is beautiful and efficient, and completely oblivious to the fact that its life support has just been severed. I feel a brief, microscopic twinge of regret for the dispatchers sitting in these cubicles. Come Friday, they are going to be caught in the crossfire of an operational bloodbath, but I harden my heart immediately. I cannot protect them without sacrificing myself to the wolves on the executive floor. The machine has to break completely, so the people who broke it can be exposed. I reach the main elevator bank just as the brushed steel doors slide open. I step inside and press the button for the lobby. The elevator begins its smooth descent. A mid-level accounts manager steps in on the floor below me, aggressively tapping out a message on his phone and muttering under his breath about a minor billing discrepancy. He has no idea that the billing dispute he is stressing over will be completely irrelevant in exactly 48 hours when the company faces total insolvency. I stand beside him, staring straight ahead, perfectly serene. The contrast between his manufactured corporate panic and my absolute genuine peace is intoxicating. The elevator reaches the ground floor with a soft chime. The doors open to reveal the sprawling marble expanse of the Vanguard Logistics lobby. The space is designed to intimidate with vaulted ceilings, indoor water features, and a massive reception desk carved from a single piece of dark granite. I walk toward the desk, where a young receptionist named Chloe is currently organizing visitor logs. Chloe is sharp, observant, and usually quick with a smile when I walk past. Today she looks up, and her professional greeting falters slightly when she sees my face. There is a calm intensity radiating from me that she clearly does not know how to process. "Good evening, Aaliyah," Chloe says, her hands pausing over her paperwork. "Are you heading out early today?" I stop directly in front of the granite desk. I reach up to the back of my neck and unclip the thick woven lanyard that holds my physical security badge. The plastic card contains my photo, my senior director title, and the embedded microchip that grants me master access to every restricted area in the building. It has been a symbol of my authority and my servitude for 3 years. I let the lanyard coil into the palm of my hand. I place it gently onto the polished granite surface, pushing it slightly toward Chloe. "I am going on a long vacation, Chloe," I say. My voice is smooth and melodic. Chloe stares at the badge resting on her desk, and then looks up at me with profound confusion, knitting her brow. "A vacation," she repeats. "But you never take time off. Did you lose your badge? Do you need me to issue a temporary replacement for tomorrow?" "No, I will not be needing a replacement," I reply, offering her a warm, brilliant smile that does not reach my eyes. "Please ensure that badge is logged and secured with human resources. Have a wonderful evening, Chloe. I do not wait for her to ask another question. I turn away from the desk and walk toward the towering sliding glass doors that separate the Vanguard lobby from the outside world. As I approach, the sensors detect my movement, and the heavy glass panels part silently, allowing me to step through. The muggy heat of the Atlanta evening hits me immediately, replacing the sterile, chilled air of the corporate building. The noise of downtown traffic washes over me, horns blaring, engines revving the chaotic heartbeat of the city. I walk down the concrete steps toward the executive parking garage. My heels click against the pavement, a steady rhythmic drumbeat marking my final departure. I find my luxury sedan sitting in its designated reserved spot. I unlock the door, slide into the premium leather driver's seat, and pull the heavy door shut. The moment the door latches, the noise of the city is completely severed. The acoustic insulation of the car wraps around me, creating a sudden absolute vacuum of sound. The silence inside the cabin is dense and heavy. It is not an empty silence. It is thick with the weight of what I have just done. I rest my hands on the leather-wrapped steering wheel and stare straight ahead at the concrete wall of the parking garage. I am out. The fortress doors have closed behind me and the locks have engaged. My medical leave is officially active. My legal protections are deployed. Vanguard Logistics is completely isolated. I mentally review the timeline, calculating the exact trajectory of the impending disaster. It is currently Monday evening. The operational budget Connor authorized has been fully processed and logged into the financial system. The accounting software will spend the next 48 hours reconciling the new numbers and preparing the automated outgoing vendor payments. When Wednesday evening arrives, the system will attempt to generate the massive quarterly licensing wire transfer to Apex Solutions. But the funding line no longer exists. The wire will fail. The system will register a critical payment default. By Thursday morning, the automated security protocols embedded deep within my Apex software will recognize the breach of contract. The algorithm will initiate a defensive sequence, slowing down data transmission and locking out secondary user credentials. Connor and his IT team will notice the lag. They will panic. They will try to bypass the security gateways using brute force administrative overrides, and that is when the trap snaps shut. When unauthorized entry is detected, the software will execute the master kill switch. By Friday morning, the entire national routing grid will go dark. Every truck will stop. Every manifest will vanish. The screens on the operations floor will go completely black. The company will be entirely paralyzed, blind, and bleeding millions of dollars by the hour. And they will not be able to call me to fix it. They will not be able to find a single piece of code they can salvage because I own the patents and I hold the only key. Vanguard Logistics is exactly 48 hours away from a total catastrophic operational collapse. I press the ignition button. The powerful engine roars to life beneath me, vibrating with restrained energy. I shift the car into drive, pull out of the parking space, and steer toward the exit ramp. I merge onto the bustling interstate, leaving the towering glass facade of the Vanguard building in my rearview mirror. I do not turn on the radio. I drive home surrounded by the profound, beautiful silence, listening only to the steady, inevitable ticking of the clock. The flight from Atlanta to Phoenix is smooth, a quiet transition from the stifling humidity of the South to the crisp, arid heat of the desert. I rent a pristine white SUV at the airport and make the 2-hour drive north. As the highway elevates, the landscape transforms. The flat, dusty plains give way to towering, majestic formations of crimson sandstone. Sedona rises from the earth like a natural cathedral, radiating an ancient, undeniable power. It is the perfect place to watch an empire burn. I pull into the circular driveway of an exclusive 5-star spa resort, hidden deep within Boynton Canyon. The valets open my door before I even shift the car into park. There is no granite reception desk designed to intimidate, only warm wood, the scent of burning sage, and attendants offering me chilled eucalyptus towels. I check into a private casita that costs more per night than what Connor used to make in a week at his old mid-level sales job. The room features a private deck, an outdoor soaking tub, and uninterrupted views of the glowing red rocks. The first thing I do when I walk through the heavy wooden door is strip away my armor. The tailored charcoal suit, the restrictive silk blouse, the rigid undergarments, I shed them all, leaving them in a careless pile on the floor. For 3 years, I have dressed like a soldier, preparing for a daily war of attrition. Today, I wrap myself in a plush, incredibly soft, white monogrammed robe. It feels like a physical manifestation of my newfound freedom. I walk over to my travel bag and deliberately leave my laptop buried at the bottom. There will be no logistics reports reviewed on this trip. There will be no late-night spreadsheet analysis. There will be absolutely no checking of the Vanguard employee portal. I am legally mandated to disconnect, and I plan to execute that mandate with absolute perfection. Instead, I reach into the side pocket of my bag and pull out a cheap prepaid burner phone. Before leaving Atlanta, I set up a silent forwarding protocol on my personal cell phone. Any calls or text messages sent to my primary number are instantly routed to this burner device. I am not completely blind to the world I left behind. I am sitting safely in a reinforced bunker watching the blast radius through a digital periscope. I turn the burner phone on. The screen glows to life, displaying a barren, unfamiliar interface. I set it on the nightstand, pour myself a glass of sparkling water from the minibar, and step out onto my private deck. The desert air is dry and pure. I close my eyes and breathe deeply, letting the silence wash over me. It is a profound, expansive silence entirely devoid of warehouse alarms, ringing dispatch phones, and the exhausting passive-aggressive chatter of my family. The first 2 days in Sedona are a masterclass in the illusion of control. Vanguard Logistics is currently running on the fumes of my previous week's labor. The automated grids are still executing their pre-programmed routes. The trucks are moving. The system is operating exactly as I designed it. And because the machinery has not seized up yet, Connor genuinely believes he is successfully driving the car. Tuesday morning arrives with the brilliant, blinding light of the Arizona sun. I am sitting on the terrace of the resort restaurant enjoying a plate of fresh fruit and a perfectly brewed espresso when the burner phone vibrates against the tabletop. I do not jump. I do not feel a spike of adrenaline. I simply set down my coffee cup, pick up the cheap plastic device, and tap the screen. It is a text message from Connor. "Hey, Aaliyah," the message reads. The tone is casual, presumptuous, and utterly oblivious to federal employment laws. "Hope you are feeling better. HR said you took some sudden medical time. Need you to point me toward the shared drive where you keep the Q3 routing macros. Trying to map out the new vendor consolidation strategy and your folders are locked. Shoot me the path when you get a second." I stare at the text message. The sheer unmitigated audacity of the man is almost breathtaking. He has been the vice president of operations for exactly 1 day. He knows I am on a federally protected medical leave for severe burnout, a leave triggered immediately after he stole the promotion I earned. And his very first instinct is to text my personal phone and casually ask me to hand over the proprietary data formulas he needs to do the job he is completely unqualified for. He does not respect my boundaries. He does not respect HR policy. He simply expects the workhorse to keep pulling the plow even from a hospital bed or a desert retreat. I do not reply. I do not type out a reminder that contacting me is a violation of my FMLA status. I do not tell him that my folders are encrypted with military-grade security software and that he will never ever breach them. I simply lock the screen, slide the phone into my robe pocket, and walk toward the spa. I spend the next 4 hours undergoing a rigorous series of deep tissue massages and hot stone therapies. The masseuse works her hands into the tight knotted muscles of my shoulders and back, physically pressing 3 years of corporate stress and familial disrespect out of my body. With every knot she dissolves, I feel myself shedding the identity of the compliant, hard-working scapegoat. I am not the Aaliyah who sits by the kitchen door at Sunday dinner. I am the CEO of Apex Solutions, and I am currently letting my hostile takeover marinate. Wednesday brings a deeper, more intoxicating level of peace. I spend the afternoon lounging by the edge of the resort's massive infinity pool. The water spills over the edge, creating a seamless visual line with the dramatic red rock canyons in the distance. The heat of the sun is a heavy, comforting blanket. A server in a crisp white uniform brings me a chilled mimosa on a silver tray. I take a sip of the cold, crisp champagne and fresh orange juice, letting the tart sweetness burst on my tongue. The burner phone vibrates again. It is sitting on the small table next to my lounge chair, safely shielded from the sun by a large umbrella. Connor has sent another text. The casual, arrogant tone from yesterday has fractured slightly. Aaliyah, this is not funny, the message says. We have a major strategy meeting this afternoon. I cannot access the back end of the routing software. The system is asking for a master compliance credential to integrate the new budget metrics. Vanguard needs those files to sync the new vendor grid. Call me as soon as you get this. I take another slow, luxurious sip of my mimosa. He still thinks he is building a new grid. He still thinks he is streamlining the department. He has absolutely no idea that the budget metrics he just tried to force into the system are exactly what triggered the fatal countdown. Today is Wednesday. The accounting software at Vanguard has officially begun reconciling the weekly ledgers. It is currently attempting to process the massive seven-figure quarterly licensing fee to Apex Solutions. But because Connor zeroed out that exact line item, the automated wire transfer is hitting a dead end. By the time the sun sets behind the red rocks tonight, the Vanguard financial system will officially log a critical payment default. By tomorrow morning, the Apex security algorithm will register the breach of contract and lock down the national infrastructure. I set my crystal glass down on the table next to the cheap plastic burner phone. The contrast makes me smile. I lean back against the plush cushions of the lounge chair, close my eyes, and turn my face up toward the Arizona sun. The peace out here in the desert is absolute silent and incredibly intoxicating. The air is still, the sky is a flawless, vibrant blue, and the world feels perfectly in balance. But deep down beneath the calm surface, I can feel the atmospheric pressure dropping. I can hear the low, distant rumble of thunder echoing all the way from Atlanta. The sky over Vanguard Logistics is turning pitch black. The storm is gathering just over the horizon, and I am the only one holding an umbrella. Thursday morning arrives with a breathtaking clarity. The desert sun crests over the red rock canyons, painting the Arizona sky in brilliant strokes of gold and violet. I am sitting on my private balcony wrapped in my heavy cotton robe, a steaming cup of herbal tea resting on the stone table beside me. The air is perfectly still. The world feels immense and entirely at peace. My cheap plastic burner phone begins to vibrate against the stone tabletop. It is a harsh mechanical buzzing that shatters the morning serenity. I do not silence it. I simply watch it dance across the table. It stops, pauses for exactly 10 seconds, and then begins to vibrate all over again. The automated routing grid at Vanguard Logistics officially failed at midnight. By dawn, the East Coast freight hubs realized they were blind. By 8 in the morning, the corporate executive floor realized they were bleeding. I pick up the phone, unlock the screen, and access the voicemail inbox. The digital voice prompts me that I have 14 new messages. I press 1 to listen. The first message was recorded at 7:14 in the morning Eastern Standard Time. It is Connor. His voice is tight-clipped and trying desperately to maintain the authoritative cadence of a vice president. Aaliyah, it is Connor. Listen, the dispatch floor is getting some sort of system-wide error prompt regarding a lapsed license for the Apex Solutions integration. The trucks cannot generate their morning manifests. I need you to shoot me the master administrative override credentials immediately. Call me back. I take a slow sip of my tea. Connor still thinks this is a minor technical glitch. He thinks a simple password will bypass a federal compliance security lockdown. He is completely oblivious to the fact that when he zeroed out the Apex budget, he did not just cancel a subscription. He triggered a hard-coded defensive protocol. I press the delete button. The automated voice confirms the message is erased. The second message is from 8:45, Connor again. The forced corporate calm has entirely evaporated. His breath is shallow and he is speaking too quickly. Aaliyah, you need to answer your phone right now. The IT department says the entire routing grid is locked behind a proprietary encryption wall. We have 2,000 drivers sitting idle in staging lots from Miami to Boston. They cannot legally move without the automated compliance logs. The system is demanding a master compliance signatory to reboot. Just give us the password. This is not funny anymore. Pick up the phone. I close my eyes and visualize the Vanguard operations floor. The massive digital tracking boards mounted high on the walls are currently pitch black. Dispatchers are staring at frozen screens, completely unable to communicate with the national fleet. The supply chain has flatlined. I press delete. The sound of Connor losing his grip on his unearned power is the sweetest music I have ever heard. I skip forward through several more frantic messages from Connor, eager to reach the heavy artillery. At 9:30, the chief executive officer steps into the arena. Kendrick's voice booms through the tiny speaker of the burner phone. He is using his deepest, most resonant boardroom register, attempting to command a ghost. Aaliyah, this is Kendrick. I am formally instructing you to contact the IT department immediately. I understand you filed for some sort of sudden medical leave, but you have left this department in a completely unacceptable state of operational hazard. Your failure to properly hand over the vendor credentials is a severe dereliction of duty. Call me the minute you get this message. I lean back in my chair and smile at the glowing canyon walls. Kendrick still believes he owns me. He believes that his corporate authority extends beyond the boundaries of federal employment law. He assumes my medical leave is a fragile excuse that he can simply intimidate me into dropping. He has absolutely no idea that Brenda in Human Resources is likely barricaded in her office, clutching my verified FMLA documents, terrified of the massive retaliation lawsuit Vanguard will face if Kendrick continues to harass a protected employee. I am legally untouchable, and his demands are entirely impotent. I press delete. The morning stretches into the afternoon. I leave the burner phone on the table and go for a leisurely hike along the canyon trails. I eat a fresh, vibrant salad for lunch. I swim in the infinity pool. When I return to the balcony at 3 o'clock, the phone is hot to the touch. The voicemail inbox is completely full. The financial bleed at Vanguard is multiplying exponentially by the hour. Perishable goods are rotting in stationary trailers. Major clients are levying massive fines for missed delivery windows. The entire corporate structure is in a state of absolute, unmitigated freefall. I access the newest messages. Kendrick has returned, and the mask of the fatherly executive has been violently ripped away. If you do not log into the mainframe and restore the Apex systems within the next 10 minutes, I will have Human Resources terminate your employment for gross insubordination and corporate sabotage. Do you hear me? You are fired. We will sue you for every dime of damages you are causing this company. Pick up the phone right now. I laugh out loud, a genuine, unburdened sound that echoes off the stucco walls of my casita. Kendrick cannot fire me. He cannot sue me for damages caused by a budget that his own newly appointed vice president of operations legally authorized. Vanguard Logistics is solely responsible for its own breach of contract. Kendrick is screaming into a void, trapped in a cage built entirely of his own hubris. I press delete. The final message I choose to listen to is from Connor. The timestamp is 2:45 in the afternoon. When his voice comes through the speaker, he sounds physically ill. He is stuttering, his words running together in a wet, pathetic stream of pure desperation. Aaliyah, please. Please pick up your phone. Kendrick is losing his mind. He is threatening to fire me. The IT guys dug into the system logs. They found out the Apex contract was tied to the operational budget I approved on Monday. I did not know the system would completely shut off. I thought it was just a redundant invoice. The software is displaying a breach of contract error. The IT director tried to hack the backend to bypass the lock, and the system just triggered a defensive blackout. Everything is gone. Please, Aaliyah, just tell me how to turn it back on. I will tell Kendrick it was a system glitch. I will take the blame for the downtime. I will cover for you. Just please, please help me. I stare at the burner phone in my hand. Connor is offering to cover for me. He is offering to protect me from a disaster that he created entirely by himself, hoping that his false benevolence will manipulate me into saving his career. He still thinks I am the loyal, desperate workhorse who will rush in to fix the broken machinery. He still thinks I am just an employee holding a password. He has absolutely no comprehension of the fact that I am the architect of his destruction, and that Apex Solutions is my personal guillotine. I press the delete button one final time. I clear the entire inbox. I set the burner phone face down on the stone table. The dominoes have not just fallen, they have been crushed into absolute dust. I sit back, close my eyes, and savor the profound, undeniable sound of their unearned confidence shattering into a million irreparable pieces. Friday morning breaks over Boynton Canyon in a wash of brilliant, unforgiving light. This is day 4 of my medical leave. More importantly, it is day 1 of Vanguard Logistics' absolute operational dark age. I sit on my private balcony watching a hawk circle the thermal currents above the red rocks. I do not need to look at a monitor to know exactly what is happening 2,000 miles away in Atlanta. I programmed the sequence myself. It is executing with the flawless, emotionless precision of a machine that has been given a singular fatal command. At precisely midnight, the accounting sweep attempted to verify the Apex Solutions quarterly licensing fee. It found a zeroed-out ledger. The system flagged the default and issued an automated warning protocol. If Connor had simply ignored it, the software would have given them a 48-hour grace period to reconcile the payment. But Connor did not ignore it. Connor panicked. He authorized his IT department to brute force their way into the encrypted backend of the routing software to force a manual override. He essentially took a crowbar to a digital vault. The moment those unauthorized amateur login attempts hit the Apex firewalls, the software triggered its ultimate defensive protocol. The master kill switch engaged. It did not just lock the users out. It severed the localized connection to the Vanguard servers, wiped the active routing caches, and deployed a hard encryption shield over the historical data. The automated infrastructure unplugged itself, packed up its code, and walked out the door. The financial hemorrhage is instantaneous and catastrophic. I take a sip of my freshly pressed green juice and calculate the carnage in my head. Right now, over 4,000 Vanguard supply trucks are parked at way stations, distribution hubs, and highway rest stops across the country. The drivers cannot legally move their rigs because their electronic logging devices have been severed from the compliance grid. They have no manifests. They have no authorized routes. They do not know where they are supposed to drop their freight, and even if they did, the receiving warehouses have no barcode authorizations to accept the deliveries. The ripple effects are expanding by the minute. Refrigerated trailers carrying perishable goods are idling, burning through diesel fuel while their cargo inches closer to spoilage. Major corporate clients are tracking the delays and triggering penalty clauses in their service-level agreements. Fines are compounding at a staggering rate. Vanguard Logistics is bleeding millions of dollars every single hour, and the executive floor is trapped in a burning building with no exits. The burner phone resting on the stone table beside me lights up. It does not vibrate with a call from Connor or Kendrick. The caller ID displays a name that makes my blood run freezing cold. Jada. My younger sister, the golden child, the woman who sat at the head of the dining room table on Sunday and gleefully offered me a mid-level desk job out of the goodness of her heart. I do not answer the call. I let it ring. It rings until it goes to voicemail, and then it immediately rings again. She calls 5 times in rapid succession. I watch the screen light up and go dark, matching the rhythm of the panic I know is currently suffocating her perfect, curated life. When the ringing finally stops, a notification appears. 5 new voicemails. I reach out, pick up the phone, and tap the screen. I put the device on speakerphone, setting it back on the table so I can listen while I finish my breakfast. Jada's voice bursts through the tiny speaker, shrill, frantic, and dripping with an entitlement so profound it almost sounds like a parody. Aaliyah, pick up the phone. I know you are getting these. Connor just called me from the office and he is having a literal panic attack. He says you locked him out of the systems on purpose. Kendrick is screaming at him. You are embarrassing my husband in front of the entire executive board and I am absolutely sick of it. Call him right now and give him the passwords. I slice a piece of melon on my plate. Her complete failure to understand the magnitude of the situation is staggering. She thinks this is a petty sibling rivalry playing out over a keyboard. She thinks I changed a password out of spite. The second voicemail plays. Jada has escalated from demands to outright vitriol. You are so incredibly jealous, Aaliyah. You have always been jealous of me and Connor. You could not stand that he got the promotion you thought you deserved, so you decided to throw a tantrum and sabotage his first week. Do you have any idea how bad this makes our family look? Dad is fielding calls from church members who work at Vanguard. You are humiliating us. Stop being a bitter single workaholic and fix this right now. If Connor loses this job because of your little stunt, I will never forgive you. I listen to the words echo against the quiet canyon walls. Bitter, single, workaholic. The buzzwords my family has used to dismiss my entire existence for over a decade. In Jada's mind, my life is a tragic consolation prize. She genuinely believes that my professional brilliance is nothing more than a coping mechanism for not having a husband. She does not care that Connor stole my promotion. She does not care that he is grossly incompetent. She only cares that the shiny veneer of her lifestyle is being threatened, and she expects me to sacrifice myself to protect it. The third and fourth voicemails are variations of the same theme, growing increasingly unhinged. She threatens to drive to my house. She threatens to have our parents disown me. She demands, she cries, she screams. The final voicemail is a masterpiece of narcissistic delusion. Her voice drops into a chilling manipulative register. Aaliyah, please, you have to fix this. Connor's bonus is supposed to pay for the renovations on the sunroom. We already signed the contractor agreements. You cannot do this to me. You owe us. You owe this family. Log in, reset the system, and apologize to Kendrick. If you do it right now, Connor said he will try to save your job. Do the right thing for once in your life. The automated voice announces the end of the messages. I reach out and press delete. I owe them nothing. I owe this family absolutely nothing. For years, I carried the weight of their expectations. I funded their lifestyles. I brought the vintage wine to the Sunday dinners where they mocked my career. I smiled politely while they placed me by the swinging kitchen door and celebrated the mediocrity of a white man simply because he gave my sister a ring and a country club membership. Jada thinks I am throwing a tantrum. She thinks I am reacting out of jealousy. She cannot fathom that I am executing a calculated, legally bulletproof dismantling of an entire corporate hierarchy. She expects me to apologize. She expects me to grovel to save a job I do not even need just so she can remodel her sunroom. Any lingering trace of familial guilt, any microscopic shred of mercy I might have harbored in the deep recesses of my conscience is completely and permanently extinguished. Jada's voicemails are the final confirmation I needed. My family does not view me as a person. They view me as a resource. And when a resource stops producing, they do not offer help. They demand compliance. I pick up the burner phone and navigate to the settings menu. I disable the voicemail feature entirely. I will not listen to another word from my sister, my parents, or the executives at Vanguard Logistics. The communication blackout is now absolute. They are entirely cut off from the outside world, trapped in a burning building with no fire escapes and no rescue crews on the way. I stand up from the patio table, wrap my robe tightly around me, and look out at the ancient, unmoving red rocks. The panic back in Atlanta is reaching a fever pitch, but out here the air is clean and silent. I have given Vanguard Logistics a lethal injection of their own arrogance. I have let my brother-in-law steer the ship straight off a cliff. I spend the rest of the day in a state of pure, unadulterated tranquility. I read a novel by the pool. I take a long, deliberate nap. I do not spare a single thought for the millions of dollars evaporating from Vanguard's ledgers or the frantic, desperate tearing apart of my sister's perfectly curated illusion. The weekend is approaching, and the corporate bleeding is only going to accelerate. They will spend Saturday and Sunday drowning in a sea of failed compliance reports and breach of contract notices. By Monday, there will be nothing left of their arrogance. By Monday, they will be crawling on their hands and knees begging for a savior, and I will be exactly where they need me to be. Sunday morning in this desert is a masterclass in stillness. The sun rises over the red rocks of Boynton Canyon, casting long, sharp shadows across the terracotta tiles of my private balcony. I am sitting in the crisp morning air, wrapped in my heavy robe, holding a crystal glass of freshly squeezed grapefruit juice. I feel completely restored. The chronic tension that lived in my shoulders for 3 years has evaporated. My mind is a clear, unclouded sky. I reach across the stone table and pick up the cheap plastic burner phone. I press the power button to wake the screen. A small red circle hovers over the phone icon. Inside the circle is the number 99. It is the maximum capacity the operating system can display before it simply stops counting. 99 missed calls. I swipe to open the call log. The screen is a cascading waterfall of panic. The names blur together in a frantic digital heartbeat of a dying corporation. Connor has called dozens of times, the timestamps showing a man spiraling through the night, dialing at 2 and 3 and 4 in the morning. Jada has called relentlessly. The Vanguard Human Resources Department has attempted contact, likely forced by executives demanding they try to breach my medical leave. And then there is Kendrick. I disabled the voicemail feature on Friday to protect my peace, but the missed call log tells a story all by itself. Vanguard Logistics is bleeding to death. I decide to re-enable the voicemail feature just briefly. I want to capture the current atmospheric pressure of the executive floor. I tap the settings, toggle the feature back on, and set the phone face down on the table. I do not have to wait long. Within 4 minutes, the phone vibrates. The screen lights up with a new voicemail notification. The caller is Kendrick. I tap the screen and put the phone on speaker. The audio crackles slightly before his voice fills the quiet desert air. Kendrick sounds like he has aged a decade in 5 days. The arrogant fatherly tone he used in the boardroom is completely gone. The polished corporate predator has been reduced to a hollow, rasping shell of a man. He is not issuing directives. He is begging. "Aaliyah, please." Kendrick's voice shakes as he speaks. "I know you are on protected medical leave. I know I cannot legally ask you to perform any duties. But I am begging you as a human being. Vanguard is dying. The automated grid is completely locked. We have drivers abandoning their trucks. We have incurred tens of millions in contractual penalties from our largest clients. The board of directors is threatening an emergency vote of no confidence." He pauses, taking a shaky, ragged breath. But that is not the worst part. I lean forward slightly, listening to the absolute desperation dripping from his words. "Apex Solutions just contacted our legal department." Kendrick continues, his voice dropping into a panicked whisper. "The vendor issued a formal binding notice of breach of contract. Their automated systems registered an unauthorized intrusion attempt by Connor's YT team. Apex Solutions is demanding an emergency in-person summit with the Vanguard Chief Executive Officer and our senior legal counsel. And Aaliyah, they explicitly stated they will not allow Connor in the room. They flatly refuse to acknowledge his authority. They said they will only negotiate with the executive team." Kendrick lets out a sound that is half sigh and half sob. "Aaliyah, we are facing total insolvency by Tuesday afternoon if the grid is not restored. We are going to have to file for bankruptcy. I need you. The company needs you. You are the only person who understands the Apex compliance structure. Please come back and act as the liaison. Name your price, name your title. Just please call me back." The automated voice announces the end of the message. The silence of the canyon rushes back in to fill the space. I look out at the ancient rock formations glowing fiercely in the morning sun. I lift my glass of grapefruit juice and take a slow, deliberate sip. The tart, bright acidity wakes up my senses. The game is officially over. The trap has done its work with absolute terrifying perfection. The prey is exhausted, cornered, and entirely pinned. Kendrick believes that Apex Solutions is a massive, faceless tech conglomerate preparing to crush his company in a boardroom. He believes that pleading with me to act as a liaison will somehow save him from the executioner. He has no idea that he is asking the executioner to hold his hand on the way to the block. I pick up the burner phone and dial Kendrick's direct executive line. I know he is sitting at his desk on a Sunday morning. I know he has not slept. The line rings exactly half a time before it is snatched up. "Hello," a frantic, breathless voice echoes through the receiver. "Aaliyah, is that you?" I do not say good morning. I do not ask how his weekend is going. I do not offer a single word of comfort or professional courtesy. I speak 5 words with absolute terrifying clarity. I will be there on Monday. I pull the phone away from my ear and press the red button to end the call. I do it before he can exhale, before he can thank me, before he can ask a single desperate question about my demands. I do not give him the satisfaction of a conversation. I give him a command. I press the power button on the side of the burner phone and hold it down until the screen goes completely black. I stand up, walk over to the trash can beside my lounge chair, and drop the useless piece of plastic inside. I will never turn it on again. I do not need a digital periscope anymore. Tomorrow, I am walking through the front door. My sanctuary in the desert has served its purpose. My mind is incredibly sharp. My energy is completely restored. I walk back into the cool, shaded interior of my casita and pull my travel bag onto the bed. I begin to pack my belongings with methodical precision. I fold my casual clothes and tuck away my toiletries. I take the plush white spa robe and drape it over the armchair. I am leaving the comfort behind. I do not need it anymore. Tomorrow morning I am flying back to Atlanta. I am leaving behind the version of Aaliyah who absorbed disrespect for the sake of the family image. I am leaving behind the workhorse who managed the spreadsheets so mediocre men could play golf. I walk over to the closet and pull out the protective garment bag I brought with me. I unzip it slowly, revealing the custom-tailored blood-red designer suit hanging inside. The fabric is flawless. The cut is razor-sharp. It is not warehouse attire. It is armor. Tomorrow morning I am walking back into the building that tried to break me and I'm going to tear it down to the studs. The humid morning air of Atlanta hits my face the moment I step out of the chauffeured black car. I did not drive my practical sedan today. I did not commute through the grinding early traffic with a travel mug of coffee, mentally preparing to put out fires on the warehouse floor. Today, I am delivered directly to the front entrance of the Vanguard Logistics headquarters, and my arrival is a carefully orchestrated event. I step onto the pristine concrete plaza. I am not wearing my usual corporate uniform. For 3 years, I dressed to blend in, wearing muted grays, sensible navies, and practical flat shoes that allowed me to navigate the concrete floors of the distribution centers. Today, I am wearing a custom-tailored blood-red designer suit. The fabric is flawless, cut with razor-sharp architectural precision that commands absolute attention. The color is vivid and unapologetic. It is the color of a blaring warning siren. It is the color of the balance sheets that are currently destroying this company. I am wearing black stiletto heels that strike the pavement with a sharp, rhythmic sound. Every step I take feels incredibly grounded. I walk through the heavy revolving glass doors and step into the sprawling marble lobby of the Vanguard building. The atmosphere inside the building is completely different from the environment I left behind last Monday. The usual bustling energy of a successful supply chain empire has been replaced by a heavy, suffocating dread. The lobby is unnervingly quiet. Employees are speaking in hushed, panicked whispers. The massive digital display screens that usually showcase real-time freight metrics and soaring profit margins are completely black. The heart of the company has stopped beating, and the silence is deafening. I walk toward the main reception desk. Chloe is sitting behind the massive granite counter, staring blankly at a blinking multi-line phone system. She looks terrified. When she hears the sharp click of my stilettos, she looks up. Her eyes widen drastically as she takes in my appearance. The red suit is a shock to the sterile corporate environment, a violent disruption of the visual hierarchy. She remembers me handing over my security badge. She remembers me saying I was going on a long vacation. Now I have returned looking like the physical manifestation of the disaster swallowing her workplace. "Good morning, Chloe," I say, my voice smooth and perfectly calm. "Good morning, Aaliyah," she stammers, automatically reaching for a visitor pass because she knows my employee badge is locked away in human resources. "Should I buzz you through the security gates?" "There is no need," I reply. I do not wait for her to press the release button. I walk directly toward the executive turnstiles. I am flanked by 2 private security guards I retained for the week. They step forward, flash their credentials to the desk, and smoothly push the heavy glass barriers open for me. I step into the executive elevator without breaking my stride. The doors slide shut, sealing away the panicked murmurs of the lobby. The ride up to the top floor is incredibly peaceful. I watch the floor numbers illuminate on the digital display, counting down the seconds until I step into the arena. I have envisioned this moment for 5 days. I have plotted every physical movement, anticipated every possible reaction, and fortified my mind against any lingering trace of familial obligation. I am not a sister today. I am not a daughter. I am a corporate executioner. The elevator chimes. The doors part to reveal the executive suite. The smell of expensive dark roast coffee is gone, replaced entirely by the sharp, acidic scent of stale sweat and sheer panic. The administrative assistants are frantically typing at their desks, their faces pale. Telephones are lighting up red across every workstation, ringing incessantly with calls from furious clients, stranded dispatchers, and screaming vendors. Nobody is answering them. There are no answers left to give. I walk down the carpeted hallway toward the main boardroom. My stilettos sink slightly into the plush flooring, muffling my approach. The heavy mahogany double doors of the boardroom are partially open, and the chaotic sounds of a corporate meltdown spill out into the corridor. I reach out and push the heavy wooden doors wide open. They swing back on their brass hinges with a solid, echoing thud. I step across the threshold and stop just inside the room. The scene before me is a beautiful, magnificent disaster. The massive conference table is completely buried under a chaotic landscape of printed contracts, red-lined financial reports, and breach of contract notices. Empty coffee cups and crumpled napkins litter the polished wood. Kendrick is standing near the far window, aggressively rubbing his temples. He has discarded his suit jacket. His expensive silk tie is loosened and hanging crookedly around his neck. The fatherly, patronizing aura he projected a week ago has been entirely incinerated. He looks exhausted, aged, and utterly defeated. Connor is standing on the opposite side of the room. He looks physically ill. His face is flushed, and large sweat stains are blooming under the arms of his pale blue dress shirt. He is holding a stack of papers with trembling hands. Scattered around the table are 3 corporate lawyers. I recognize the senior partner from Vanguard's external legal counsel. They are surrounded by open briefcases and laptops, frantically scrolling through digital contract clauses, searching for a legal loophole that simply does not exist. They look like a medical team trying to resuscitate a patient who has been dead for 3 days. The moment I step into the room, the frantic arguing instantly ceases. Every head snaps in my direction. For a long, suspended second, nobody breathes. They stare at the vivid, blood-red suit. They stare at my perfect posture and the total lack of anxiety on my face. I am standing in the middle of a catastrophic crisis, looking like I just arrived for a luxury photo shoot. Connor is the first to break the silence. His survival instinct kicks in, but it is deeply flawed. He realizes that the corporate lawyers are watching, and he desperately needs to maintain the illusion that he holds some shred of authority over this situation. He needs a scapegoat, and he firmly believes that the black woman standing in the doorway is still his subordinate. He tosses his stack of papers onto the table and steps forward, inflating his chest to project a false manufactured dominance. He assumes his role as the vice president of operations, totally oblivious to the fact that the title is completely worthless. Aaliyah, finally. Connor says, his voice loud and overly aggressive, trying to mask the tremor of panic underneath. Where have you been? We are dealing with a massive situation here. Your sudden absence caused a critical glitch in the automated licensing grid. I need you to get the Apex Solutions representatives on the phone right now. He points a finger at me, trying to issue a direct command in front of the legal team to save face. You need to apologize to them for the accounting glitch, Connor demands, his tone dripping with unearned authority. You need to smooth this over and get them to release the routing grid immediately. Vanguard is losing millions while you take a vacation. Fix this. He stands there, chest puffed out, waiting for me to nod. He is waiting for me to apologize for the inconvenience, pull out my laptop, and start cleaning up the mess he authorized. He expects me to shrink back into the obedient, hard-working backbone of the company and save his career. I do not blink. I do not change my expression. I do not say a single word. I look directly through Connor as if he is made of glass. I treat his command like a draft of air from a broken vent. I simply begin to walk. My stilettos strike the hardwood floor outlining the edge of the conference room. Click, click, click. The sound is sharp, rhythmic, and absolutely terrifying in the silent room. I walk past the empty chairs lining the side of the table. I walk past the exact spot where I sat just 1 week ago, the spot where I was politely told I lacked executive presence. I walk past the 3 corporate lawyers who are watching my progression with wide, bewildered eyes. I walk right past Connor, ignoring him so completely that he physically steps back, deeply unnerved by my absolute refusal to acknowledge his existence. I reach the far end of the long mahogany table. This is the seat reserved exclusively for the chief executive officer or the chairman of the board. It is a high-backed, tufted leather executive chair. It is the geographic center of power in this room. I pull the heavy leather chair back. The wheels roll smoothly over the carpet. I turn smooth the skirt of my blood-red suit and sit down. I cross my legs at the ankles. I rest my elbows on the polished mahogany wood. I fold my hands together, interlacing my fingers perfectly. I lean back against the plush leather and finally allow my eyes to meet Kendrick's. Kendrick is staring at me from the window. He is looking at the woman he dismissed as a warehouse manager, currently sitting in his throne, wearing the color of his dying company. He opens his mouth to speak, but the words die in his throat. I sit at the absolute head of the Vanguard Logistics boardroom, completely silent, waiting for them to finally understand who really controls the room. Kendrick stares at me, his chest heaving with shallow, erratic breaths. The sheer audacity of me sitting in his chair temporarily overrides his panic about the failing company. He steps away from the window and marches forward, placing his hands flat on the polished mahogany table. "What do you think you are doing?" he demands. His voice is a harsh, trembling whisper that barely conceals his mounting dread. "Get out of my chair. Where are the representatives from Apex Solutions? You said they were meeting us here." Connor looks back and forth between us, still desperately clinging to his fabricated authority. "Aaliyah, this is not a game," Connor says, his voice cracking slightly. "I ordered you to get them on the phone. We do not have time for a power trip. Thousands of trucks are sitting dead on the highway." I do not move. I do not flinch. I slowly bring my hands down to the brass latches of my designer briefcase, resting on the table. The sharp metallic clicks echo loudly in the silent, suffocating room. I open the lid and pull out a thick, impeccably bound legal dossier. I lift it high enough for everyone to see, then drop it onto the polished wood. The heavy thud makes the 3 corporate lawyers physically jump in their seats. "They are already here," I say. My voice is smooth, lethal, and perfectly calm. I press my fingertips against the thick stack of paper and slide it smoothly down the length of the table. It glides across the mahogany and stops precisely in front of Kendrick. Kendrick looks at the dossier like it is a live explosive. The senior corporate counsel, a man who has navigated decades of ruthless mergers, leans over and adjusts his glasses. Kendrick opens the heavy cover. The first page is the official Delaware Limited Liability Company Incorporation certificate for Apex Solutions. The second page contains the proprietary patent registrations for the automated routing algorithms. The third page is the master vendor licensing agreement signed by Vanguard Logistics 3 years ago. Printed clearly at the bottom of every single document listed as the sole founder, managing director, and chief executive officer is my full legal name. I watch the exact moment the realization hits them. It is a beautiful, devastating physical transformation. The remaining color drains completely from Kendrick's face, leaving his skin an ashen, sickly gray. His hands begin to shake so violently that the heavy paper trembles against the wood. The senior corporate counsel lets out a sharp, involuntary gasp. He looks up at me, his eyes wide with absolute, unadulterated terror. "You," Kendrick whispers. His vocal cords sound torn and useless. "You are Apex." "I am Apex," I confirm. I lean back against the tufted leather of the executive chair. "I own the software you rely on. I hold the patents. I am the vendor you have been paying for the last 3 years. And I am the chief executive officer you requested this emergency meeting with. Connor is standing on the sidelines, his face scrunched in total confusion. The operational reality of the situation is flying completely over his head. What does that mean? Connor asks, looking wildly around the room. Kendrick, what does that mean? Just tell her to turn the grid back on. The senior lawyer turns to Connor with a look of pure, unmasked disgust. It means the lawyer says, his voice dripping with venom, that she holds all the cards. She owns the infrastructure. We do not own it. We only license it. And you, Connor, formally authorized the cancellation of that license. I nod approvingly at the lawyer. Exactly. When Connor zeroed out the Apex licensing fee on his new operational budget and then authorized his IT department to hack the encrypted backend, he committed a massive documented breach of contract. A contract that Vanguard Logistics holds with my company. My security protocols simply engaged to protect my intellectual property. The system did exactly what it was programmed to do when it detected a hostile threat. This is a conflict of interest, Kendrick shouts, slamming his fist on the table. A sudden, desperate surge of adrenaline spikes in his chest, a final attempt to regain control. This is corporate fraud. You were an employee. You cannot be a major vendor. We will sue you into absolute oblivion. I fully disclosed my outside investments to human resources 3 years ago. I reply, my tone remaining effortlessly placid. It is filed in my onboarding paperwork. The board of directors reviewed the Apex contract and signed it willingly because the software saved this company millions of dollars. There is no fraud, Kendrick. The only gross negligence happening in this room is the fact that you promoted a man who completely dismantled your supply chain in less than 5 days. Kendrick sags against the edge of the table. The adrenaline crash hits him instantly. He looks at his lawyers searching for a lifeline, but they are all shaking their heads. He realizes I am entirely right. The legal perimeter I built around myself is flawless. Suing me would require entering a prolonged federal litigation process during which Vanguard Logistics would remain completely paralyzed. They do not have months to fight me in court. They do not even have hours. They will be entirely bankrupt by tomorrow afternoon, and personal liability lawsuits will destroy their individual wealth. What do you want? Kendrick asks. The fight is completely gone from his voice. He sounds like a broken, hollowed-out shell. I want what I am owed, I say. I reach into my briefcase a second time and pull out a 3-page settlement agreement drafted by my own legal team over the weekend. I slide it down the table. It comes to rest right on top of the incorporation papers. These are my terms, I announce, dictating the conditions with absolute, unyielding authority. First, Vanguard Logistics will execute an immediate, irrevocable buyout of the Apex Solutions software contract. The purchase price is $38 million payable via wire transfer by close of business today. The lawyers flinch at the number, but nobody speaks. $38 million is a staggering sum, but it is a fraction of what they will lose in market capitalization if the trucks do not start moving by midnight. It is the exact cost of their survival. Second, I continue my gaze locking onto Kendrick to ensure he feels the full weight of my demand. You are going to step down as Chief Executive Officer. You will announce your early retirement to the Board of Directors this afternoon. You will cite health reasons. You will surrender your voting rights, and you will never hold a board seat at this company again. Kendrick closes his eyes tightly. He swallows hard, his jaw tight with humiliation. He does not argue. He knows that if the board finds out he caused a $38 million catastrophe by promoting his incompetent golfing buddy over the actual architect of their success, they will fire him publicly and strip his equity. Retiring gracefully is the only way he saves his own financial portfolio. And finally, I say, shifting my eyes to the man sweating profusely on the other side of the room, Connor is terminated immediately. He is not permitted to resign. He will be fired for cause specifically gross operational negligence resulting in catastrophic corporate losses. He will receive 0 severance. He will be escorted out of this building by security within the next 10 minutes, and he is never allowed to set foot on this property again. Connor physically recoils. His face flushes a deep, humiliated crimson. You cannot do that, Connor stammers, his voice rising in panic. He looks desperately at Kendrick. Kendrick, You cannot let her do this. I am family. You know my father-in-law. You know Julian. You cannot just fire me. Kendrick looks at Connor with a gaze so filled with pure loathing it could freeze boiling water. Shut your mouth, Connor, Kendrick hisses. Just shut your mouth before she raises the price. I rest my hands flat on the polished mahogany table. The terms are non-negotiable. You have exactly 5 minutes to sign those documents. The moment the wire transfer clears my holding accounts, I will provide the decryption keys to restore the national routing grid. If you refuse, I stand up. I walk out that door, and Vanguard Logistics ceases to exist. The silence in the boardroom is absolute and crushing. There is no negotiation. There is no counter-offer. They are trapped in a burning building, and I am standing by the only exit holding the key, stating the price of admission. The senior corporate counsel picks up a silver pen. He reviews the signature lines on my settlement agreement. He looks at Kendrick and nods once a grim, silent confirmation that they have absolutely no alternative. Kendrick walks slowly back to the table. His hands are trembling as he takes the pen from the lawyer. He signs his name on the dotted line, officially ending his own career and authorizing my massive payout. He slides the paper toward Connor. Connor is shaking uncontrollably. He looks like a child who has just been caught breaking a priceless artifact and realizes he cannot glue the pieces back together. He picks up the pen and signs his termination papers, officially destroying his unearned executive title and cementing his status as a colossal documented failure. I sit in the executive chair and watch them sign their own corporate death warrants. I do not feel pity. I do not feel any lingering resentment. I only feel the glorious, intoxicating weight of total, undisputed victory. The heavy silence in the boardroom is finally broken by the sharp metallic scrape of a silver pen being set down on polished mahogany. The senior corporate counsel carefully inspects the signatures on the termination papers and the buyout agreement. He nods once in my direction, a silent confirmation of total surrender. I do not look at Kendrick, who is staring blankly at the far wall, a ghost of the chief executive officer he was an hour ago. I look down at my personal phone. A secure notification banner flashes across the screen, verifying that an 8-figure wire transfer has successfully cleared into my primary holding account. Vanguard Logistics has officially purchased its own survival. I pull a sleek encrypted flash drive from the pocket of my blazer and slide it smoothly across the table to the IT director, who has just been permitted to enter the room. The drive contains the decryption keys and the operational bridge to restore the automated routing grid. The national supply chain will be functioning again within the hour, but the executive leadership of this company has been permanently gutted. 2 burly corporate security guards step through the double glass doors. I watch with absolute ice-cold satisfaction as the senior counsel instructs Connor to hand over his company phone and his keys. Connor is physically trembling. He is stripped of his title, his access, and his dignity in front of the entire legal team. A security guard hands him a standard-issue brown cardboard box. Connor is marched out of the boardroom, his footsteps shuffling heavily against the hardwood floor. He does not look back. I snap the brass latches of my designer briefcase shut, stand up from the executive chair, and walk out of the Vanguard building for the last time. By 7 o'clock that evening, I am sitting in the private lounge of a downtown high-rise, sipping a glass of rare vintage champagne. My phone, which is no longer on a communication blackout, begins to buzz with a relentless, frantic stream of messages. They are all from my mother. She demands I get over to the house right now. She says my father is furious. She says I have destroyed the family. I take my time finishing my drink. I am a chief executive officer who just orchestrated a $38 million acquisition. I do not rush for anyone. When I finally instruct my private driver to take me to Buckhead, the sun has fully set. The sprawling estate of Reverend Julian and Vivian is lit up like a cathedral against the dark Atlanta sky. I walk up the brick steps and push open the heavy oak doors, stepping straight into the massive formal living room. The scene before me is a perfect manufactured tableau of high society tragedy. Jada is draped dramatically across the velvet sofa, sobbing hysterically into a linen tissue. Connor is pacing near the stone fireplace, attempting to look like a man who has been unjustly persecuted, rather than a man who nearly bankrupted a national corporation. My mother paces the Persian rug, her face flushed with absolute fury. My father stands behind his heavy mahogany desk, radiating righteous pastoral anger. The moment I step into the room, Vivian launches her assault. She does not ask how my day was. She does not ask for the operational truth behind what happened at the company. She immediately attacks my character. She screams about how I maliciously set out to destroy my brother-in-law out of pure bitter jealousy. She calls me spiteful and vindictive. Jada wails louder, throwing her hands in the air. She cries about how Connor's reputation in the corporate sector is completely ruined. She complains that they will be stripped of their exclusive country club membership, that their social standing in Atlanta is completely decimated, and that she will have to cancel the renovations on her sunroom. Julian strikes his desk with a heavy fist. The booming voice he uses to command thousands of congregants every Sunday is now directed entirely at me. He tells me I have disgraced the Christian values of this household. He says my actions are a dark stain on the legacy he has spent 40 years building, and that I should be on my knees begging for my sister's forgiveness. I stand in the center of the living room wearing my blood-red designer suit, and I let their vitriol wash over me like rain against a window pane. I do not raise my voice. I do not defend my professional brilliance. I do not bother explaining the intricacies of federal compliance vendor contracts or supply chain architecture. They do not care about the truth of my career. They only care about the optics of their lifestyle. Connor shoots me a look of desperate pleading warning from the fireplace. He knows I hold all the cards at Vanguard, but he thinks the bleeding stops at the corporate plaza. He thinks he is safe in the sanctuary of my parents' house. He assumes that his status as the white, charming golden son-in-law will protect him from any further consequences. He is entirely wrong. I open my briefcase one final time. I pull out a thick, meticulously bound financial dossier. I do not hand it to my mother or my crying sister. I walk directly to my father and drop the heavy folder right onto his mahogany desk. The sharp thud silences the room instantly. Julian looks down at the folder, his righteous anger faltering into confusion. "What is this?" he demands, his voice dropping to a wary rumble. "That is the real cost of your golden child's lifestyle," I say, my voice smooth and chillingly calm. When Connor was not busy driving Vanguard Logistics into the ground, he was busy funding his country club dues and Jada's designer wardrobe with someone else's money. I instruct my father to open the folder. I explain that during my deep dive into Connor's background while preparing for my corporate takeover, I ordered a quiet forensic audit of his financial footprint. The documents inside that folder clearly trace a series of complex unauthorized wire transfers. Connor has been quietly and systematically embezzling thousands of dollars from the megachurch outreach fund for the past 18 months. He used his position as the beloved trusted son-in-law to bypass the church financial oversight committee and siphon charitable donations directly into his private accounts. Julian's face turns the color of ash as his eyes scan the bank statements. Vivian completely stops breathing. Jada's theatrical sobs cut off, instantly replaced by a genuine suffocating terror. Connor stumbles back against the fireplace mantel, his face completely devoid of blood. The illusion of the perfect, faithful, successful son-in-law shatters into a million irreparable pieces right in front of their eyes. They realize simultaneously that Connor is not just a corporate failure. He is a common thief who stole from the house of God to buy his way into high society, and Jada has been wearing the stolen money on her back. I look at the four of them. The silence in the room is absolute, heavy with the devastating weight of undeniable truth. I look at my mother, who shoved me into the corner by the kitchen door and called my career a warehouse job. I look at my sister, who offered me a mid-level desk role out of pure condescending charity. I look at my father, who valued a mediocre white man's hollow title over his own black daughter's absolute genius. "You wanted a legacy," I tell them, my voice cutting through the heavy air like a diamond blade. "You just bet on the wrong child." I do not wait for their excuses. I do not stay to watch Julian unleash his biblical wrath upon Connor or watch Jada realize her entire marriage is built on a foundation of stolen church funds. I turn my back on them and walk out of the heavy oak doors for the very last time. The humid Atlanta night air feels incredibly fresh against my skin. My private driver is waiting beside a sleek, brand new Maybach in the circular driveway. He opens the rear door for me. I slide into the plush leather seat, leaning my head back against the headrest, and tell him to drive. I look out the tinted window as the sweeping, heavily mortgaged estate disappears into the darkness behind me. I am not angry, I am not bitter. I am the sole owner of a newly acquired 8-figure fortune. I am a titan in my industry, and I am finally entirely free.